Alrighty. Just talking to somebody who's come back from Western Australia, and they know somebody who had a farm, quite a reasonable sized one, that they sold to the Chinese. Now, once before I made a video mentioning some of the few things where the Chinese stuff up. They're cunning with business, but they tend to shoot themselves in the foot when it comes to being too cheap on investing in their own business. It's like Chinese boss down here with his posts. You know, didn't want to buy Australian steel posts that actually hold up. Well, they're too expensive. So he goes and gets these ones from China that were about as weak as cast iron. I mean, you grab hold of it and you give it a good pull and you snap it off. These are replacing treated pine posts that are as thick as my leg that have snapped off previously. And you're going to replace it with a post that's slightly thinner than a star picket and cracks like blooming cast iron. You know, I can tell that before long he'll be replacing all those posts yet again, because they'll all crack off often enough if you've got enough foliage. You know, there's times where they've got these sheet metal ones that they make here. Those ones will snap off if you've got enough wind and enough foliage on your vines. They'll snap those off. And they're Australian-made sheet metal ones that are a hell of a fancy shape, you know, to give them plenty of structural strength. But, oh, holy smoke, you know. It's when you manufacture things, when you make yourself, you know, like when you're selling power tools, electrical equipment, you can cheap out on the motor. You can use a little bit less wire on the windings. You know, like that vacuum cleaner, they didn't even solder the fittings, they just crimped the blasted things, and it just looked like something bent with a set of pliers. It didn't look like, you know, your crimped spade fittings that you have in cars or anything like that with a proper crimping tool. You know, those are just bent over, you know, to save a bit of solder or whatever. You can cheap out with some things. You can give them thinner electrical cable and make the cable real short. You know, so they've got to use an extension lead to be able to fit the damn thing in the power point, and whatever. You can cheap out on some things. You can get away with that. But when it comes to, like, agriculture, you can't really cheap out, because it's one of these things that you only get back what you put in. I mean, for instance, he wanted us to go and put these posts in with a sledgehammer. We said, God, blimey, when are we going to get all this done? We've got stacks of posts to do. We've got stacks of other jobs. And now you're saying that you're going to buy a bigger sledgehammer. Well, in the end, they managed to convince him to get a post hole banger, which he used himself for the first time and gloriously broke off the blast on-off switch on the bloody thing, so then we had to stuff around to even get the on-off switch to work. But anyway, at least we got one. But this is the thing, you know, everything I'm going to cheap out so much they end up, a lot of the times it's fine in China because labour's so cheap, but over here they want to do it the same way, but the labour cost they lose for 3 blokes spending a month driving around a vineyard as opposed to 3 days driving around a vineyard, replacing the posts, it's obviously going to be cheaper just to go and spend your $150 or whatever it was, $200, and get your post hole banger, and that's what he eventually did. But everything else, you know, don't want to fertilise, don't want to use any sort of flipping pesticide and snail bait and anything like that. Meanwhile, the snails are tearing the shit out of it. There's borers in things, there's these other blooming caterpillars ripping the hell out of it as well, and God, 3 different kinds of pests riddled through the joint. But no, we don't want to spend any money. Yeah, but you only get back what you put in, and if you don't spend this dough, you're going to lose it all. Sometimes you spend all the dough and then you get a drought, and you still lose it all. You know, but you're definitely not going to flame and get any success if you don't put in spend the money that you need to spend, because you only get out what you put in. And in some cases like this place here, this is great how we can sort of run sheep here, and hey, the soil is exceedingly good, and there is enough nutrition, and we don't have to spend much, But there's some things, especially when you're dealing with crop, when you're dealing with grapevines, wheat, stuff like that, you've got to spend the dough, or it's just not going to flame and happen. And especially when you're in, poor soil types. Anyway, these people in Western Australia they had a farm that was worth about $1 million, but they had a mortgage they were still paying off, and they were having a fair bit of trouble making those payments. These Chinese turned up and offered them $3 million, straight up offered them $3 million. Bang, sold it, not a problem. And they were relieved to be out of debt, and they now got plenty of dough. This sort of happens often enough. I had some leftist friggin' dipshit living in their own world who asked me, who told me that I was xenophobic against the Chinese. So that's funny, because I've worked with them and all that without a problem. And they weren't really buying up land and stuff all over the place. Yeah, that's exactly why there's a parliamentary inquiry into it. It takes a lot to get a parliamentary inquiry started, but there's a parliamentary inquiry into the Chinese buying up a lot of stuff, and you're going to tell me that they aren't buying up a lot of stuff at all? Go back in your own little plastic bubble there, because in the real world they're buying up a lot of coal mines and they're buying up a lot of farms. And, these guys were some of the people who had their farm bought, and they talked to this person I was talking to, who they'd been friends with years ago. And most of these deals usually involve staying on for 2 years to teach the Chinese how to farm. Their deal only involves staying on 1 year. And on occasion, they'll go back and sort of just drop in and see how they're going, or see what's going on with the farm, just visit. And they say that, they're basically retired. They had so much money, they were near retirement age anyway. But they've retired, but they go around there, maybe once or twice a year just to see what's going on. And apparently, true to form, just like Chinese vineyard boss, these Chinese who bought their farm off them in Western Australia, that was based on wheat cropping, growing wheat. Same thing. Ignore all the fertiliser, ignore the herbicides, ignore the weeds, ignore the pesticide. She'll be right. And they really don't know what they're doing. They're gone cheap and are completely clueless. They've had an Irish bloke come out, and he's also been a farmer in Ireland, he'll be good with it, blah blah, or something. I don't know if the dude had been a farmer in Ireland or not, but they had a lot of trust in this Irish bloke who they bought out. The Chinese got this Irish bloke onto that farm, and he can't drive a tractor to save his life, and a lot of this expensive farm equipment, he's basically broke a lot of it by tangling a lot of shit up and crashing a lot of stuff into stupid things. You got to be careful of trees and stuff when you're in things like harvesters, because harvesters are pretty tall and whatnot. And it's their prediction of where their farm's going to end up is it's basically just going to be a complete circus, and somebody's probably going to buy it back for probably less than the $1 million it was worth, definitely less than the $3 million that they were paid for it by the Chinese, who really paid too much. But when they do buy it back, half the machinery is going to be trashed, half the fences will be trashed, there'll be weeds everywhere, blah blah blah, everything will be in disarray. And they believe that that's where their farm is headed, that somebody else in years to come is going to buy it for not a great deal of money, but it's going to be in real bad shape all around. Weeds, fencing, probably water pipes, maybe soil erosion. And they, from what they're seeing, see a lot of that sort of stuff going on, and they believe pretty much that most of these farms being bought by the Chinese in Western Australia are likely to go down that same road. They're so intrinsically tight with stuff, and because they're rich guys, probably with a manufacturing background or construction background, they're no good at farming. And even when you do teach them, they want to find a different way, and they want to cheap out, and they want to do it on the cheap. And it was like Chinese boss down there. He had consultants who would turn up and give their advice on what he needed to do to make his vineyard more productive. One of the consultants walked in there and sat down, and he told him, in front of the other workmates that I had before I was working there, "You're the 9th consultant I've had come in. I want to see if you can pick what the problem is." Well, the other 8 consultants before him, Chinese boss, could definitely have told you what you were doing wrong, as did many other local vineyard managers in other vineyards, but you just couldn't see it. And it was all about being cheap, and that'll be the downfall. But anyway, I'm not. It's a bit disappointing, but I'm not too worried, because he said he's only going to hang on to the place for 5 years. And if you can't make a go of it in 5 years, he'll sell it. Well, that'll be good, because I'll be at that clearing sale, at that auction, and I'll be snapping up a bit of the equipment there, especially the poor little white tractor that nobody can seem to start because the key mechanism's stuffed up. But if you touch a certain point on the starter motor, it starts up fine, and it's a fantastic little machine. But because I'm one of the few people that know how to get that thing to start, there's not likely to be many bids put in on it. And I'll be there bidding on that. I might see if I can pick up some of the other bits and pieces. But that's the thing, you sort of... too rich, with not enough experience in farming, not willing to take advice, cutting back to the last bloody dollar, don't want to spend any money, and because it's only get back what you put in system, they face inevitable bankruptcy, and or just simply realising that they're not turning a profit and it's going nowhere, and they give up, and somebody else takes it on and hopefully makes a go of it.